Now we're going to work on line management, and this is a great exercise to do at home. You don't even need the dog. As you can see, I have my long line wrapped around this post. I slid the leather stopper so it's snug so it won't keep sliding down to the ground. You can do that onto a doorknob. So just a couple ways I set my line up. So there's a couple terms you're going to hear me say. That's one of them, set your line up. So this is what we're going to go over right now. If you hear me say clean up your line, it's usually because people have not coiled it properly and it's a big jumbled mess like this. And I've actually had a client who was not paying attention and his dog bolted and he broke his peaking finger because this got wrapped around and just yarded it. So that's why it's critical to have really good line management, and also just so you have really nice fluidity when you're out working the dog, so you're not thinking about the long line work, you're just able to watch the dog. Then if you add remote collar in, then that's just another element. So if this one's dialed in, you can just keep dropping stuff in and it's like not even going to phase your long line management. So this is why I always press that people get this down first before you even go thinking about doing the remote collar stuff, because if this is wired, then everything else is much simpler. So this is how I set it up. I typically will put the hand loop over my index finger, sometimes over these three fingers. Just depends. I don't know why I switch. I don't even think about it. So, but whatever's comfortable for you. So the two things we're going to work on in this is coiling and then letting the line pay out. So coiling is basically this. The line rests basically on your fingertips. We're not clutching it. There's no like clutching lines. We're going to show you how to break, so the dog, if the dog takes off and you want to stop the dog, how to break the dog, not trying how to hold the dog back. So if the lines are just sitting on your fingers like this, when the dog moves away, you can just let them pay off of your hands. And then the other component is this left hand. For me, this is always going to stay on the line as much as possible, unless you're just going to let the line kind of completely drag and just hold the hand loop. I do that in some cases, but for the most part, this is going to help control the slack from getting under the dog's legs, so you don't get this dog that's constantly tangling up and you have to go and clean that up. So that's one reason. The other reason is that if you want to short the dog, so say you don't want the dog going out 15 and he's going out, you have two ways to mitigate that. You can either run back and suck up the slack, or you can use your left hand, and if you just turn it down this way, that's going to put enough friction in the system. I can hold, if I just do this and lean back, I'm pretty much just leaning my whole weight. It's starting the slip, right? But again, there's a lot of stretch in this, and the dog's not going to typically be leaning. I'm a 190 or something. So with my second hand here, I'm holding almost my entire weight. Now, if you want it to be more secure, you can do just this, what I call a finger lock. So you're always coming in to get your line palm down, not palm up. Problem with palm up is if the dog takes a run and bolts, everyone's initial response is try and squeeze this. You're going to come out with a nasty rope burn. If your hand's down, the likelihood of that happening is far less, right? So this finger lock, again, you're going to come in palm down, like these are scissors, and you're just going to cut here. And what you do is you just flip it over this index finger at the very base. You want to make sure it's way at the base, and you flip it so it creates a friction point between these two fingers, your thumb and your index. I'm actually squeezing. So I'm squeezing almost right in here so this doesn't slide out of position. So again, and now I'm using this turned down hand with this in action, and I can lean back and not have to use my second hand because I have 2 points of friction here. So it's a really good way to kind of block a dog. Typically, we're not popping the long line. We're always just using kind of steady pressure on and off. So a lot of times when I'm working with dogs and they pack in, and now they're very high in pack drive where they're just staying with me. A lot of times I'll coil my line all the way up to a point where I would use the length for walking, and I would lock this finger and I would just start working the dog in heels, because I figure if he wants to be there, why not go ahead and teach them how to stay here, right? So those are the ways to kind of set that up and how to mitigate if a dog is bolting safely by doing just your turn down, or if you get good at this finger lock thing. A lot of times all this coming really quick, I'll take my hand off and just finger lock, and I have it already. So it happens so quick. I can be here and then I just rotate, and now I have this lock in my hand, right? That finger lock. So the more, again, you're practicing these things in the house, the less you think about them in the field. So here's what it looks like when we're coiling and paying the line out. So it's going to be reversed. So if I'm going towards the post, that's the dog basically coming back to me. So that's going to create slack in the system, right? So dog's away from me. If I move towards the post, slack is in the system. That means the dog is coming at us. And if I move away from the post, that means the dog's moving away. We're going to pay out. So it's basically, I'm trying to take the biggest amount of rope in at any given time, so I can have at least 1.5 to 2 foot loops hanging in this hand. You know, the more you do this, smaller loops, the more material you have in your hand, and the harder it's going to be to have a remote there. So always remember, take as big a loop as you can, or big a bite of rope as you can, so you can have pretty good sized loops. So basically, this is dog going away, dog coming back to me. Dog going away, it's that left hand, I'm just letting it ride through. Dog coming back. And you just keep doing this. You can be watching TV. People might think you're kind of crazy. But, you know, and until you're at the point where you're not even thinking about it. The other good reason, just show you really quick, to have this loop, sometimes you'll get a dog that maybe I want to kick out of prey drive. And it's fixating. I can do two things when I have kind of a good set of loops here. I can take this, let's say the dog's out away from me there. I can take this, he's going to be away here, more likely. I'll pop this across my leg as the dog is in close proximity. And a lot of times, if they're very flighty, that's going to startle them. And when it does, I'll let the rope out, and then I'll work the dog back to me. Another good way to break state is that the dog's in front of me. And again, the one thing is a big no-no is to be on this angle of the dog. So head, spine down the line is a no-go. So if you have the spine coming down the line, you're always going to want to kind of angle off. You can keep the pressure on, but just angle off, and it helps to pull the dog around. Also, this is going to create more of an oppositional reflex problem in some dogs. So, but if they are stuck on something, you can take this loop and you have all this tension. If you just kind of go across the line, it makes a pretty good pop, but it also reverberates down the line, and it can actually startle the dog. And at that point, what you'll do is just start moving the dog again. So that's a good way to kind of kick them into a little flight. And then your responsibility after that is to work the dog back in the pack drive. All right. So this is basically your line management exercise. So I would suggest just kind of doing this until you really feel like you have it dialed in. And when you do, get a dog, head out to the field. And next, I'm going to do my best to shoot as many different dogs as I can, starting out on the long line, so you kind of have a really good example of what it looks like with not just one dog, but we'll probably start with Juno.